ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, there are people in life or people who pass through this life and write the pages of history with the ink of their sacrifices. One of such individuals in the tradition of Islam is a woman who helped define the role of the Muslim woman, which unfortunately today is being redefined with each passing day due to the prevalence of much ignorance and much misunderstanding of the entire system of Islam, in addition to the fashion shows and entertainment that has all become the hallmark of Islamic events for our women. This particular woman represented a balance, the wasatiyah of Islam, between quwwah wa shuja'ah, between strength of character and courage, wa bayn al-iman wal-haya, and between modesty and an unwavering faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A balance that has been neglected, either been neglected or misrepresented by many Muslim women today, unfortunately. This particular woman was an early convert to Islam, dating all the way back to the Bay'atul Aqaba, to the first pledge of allegiance that was given by the Ansar to the Prophet ﷺ. She was from the tribe of Al-Khazraj in Al-Medina, and as we know, the women from Medina were a little bit more aggressive and assertive than the women from Mecca. As Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, كنا معشر قريش نغلب النساء فلما قدمنا المدينة وجدنا قوما تغلبهم نساؤهم فطفق نساؤنا يتعلمن من نسائهم. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, نحن معشر قريش, we the people of Mecca, we used to be very aggressive, or more aggressive and assertive than our women. Meaning in Mecca, the system in Mecca was more patriarchal, where the men were more aggressive and more assertive than the women. كنا معشر قريش يعني أهل مكة كنا نغلب نساءنا. We were more aggressive and more assertive than our women in Mecca. He said, but when we came to Medina, فلما قدمنا المدينة, when we got to Medina, وجدنا قوما يعني الأنصار تغلبهم نساؤهم, and we found the Ansar to be the type of people that their women were more aggressive than they were. So we can see that the demeanor of women changes from society to society, from culture to culture, And what one group may view as oppressive to women in one culture, the same could be said about their culture. Who are you to put yourself in a position of judge and jury to say that women in this environment or in this society are being oppressed because they dress like this or because they interact with their spouses like that? Who are you to judge women from your place of privilege, from your culture, from the standards of your culture? He said that we, the people of Mecca, and these were all Arabs within the Arabian Peninsula, and you can see that the differences of their culture, the nuances that made them who they are. He said, we, the people of Mecca, we were more aggressive than our women. But when we migrated to Medina, we found the Ansar to be the type of people who their women were more aggressive than they were. He said, فَاتَّفِقَ نِسَاؤُنَا يَتَعَلَّمْنَا مِن نِسَائِهِمْ. He said, and lo and behold, our women, meaning the women who migrated from Mecca to Medina, began to assimilate, began to learn the behavior of the women of Medina. And it's important for us to understand that the natural disposition of a woman may in fact change due to circumstances and situation, and can be shaped by the environments in which they live, in which they find themselves in. But the natural predisposition of a woman is to be feminine. That is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created her. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this being and defined her natural disposition as one of femininity. Allah says in the Quran, أَوَمَنْ يُنَشَّأُ فِي الْحِلْيَةِ وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ. Can this creature who was raised in trinkets, يعني تُرَبَّى عَلَى الزِّينَةِ, that this creature, this woman, this feminine creature was adorned, raised in adornments and trinkets. We get our daughter's ears pierced 6 months after she's born. We begin to buy her bracelets and earrings and necklaces and, ankle bracelets, and buy her pink and, all of these different things, because that is the life of a woman. May not necessarily be for every child, but this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the woman in the Quran. He said, أَوَمَنْ يُنَشَّأُ فِي الْحِلْيَةِ وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ. Can this creature who was raised in adornments and trinkets, وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ, and in the midst of a heated conversation can barely articulate themselves, can this one be considered a god or a child of God, or God reincarnated? And the scholars, they say, وَلِذَلِكَ رُخِّصَ لِلنِّسَاءِ فِي الْحَرِيرِ وَالذَّهَبِ. And it is as because of this feminine nature of women that the Islamic legislation has allowed for her to wear gold and silk, which it has been prohibited for Muslim men. The Prophet ﷺ, he had silk in one hand, gold in another hand, and he said, إِنَّ هَذَيْنِ لَمُحَرَّمَيْنِ عَلَى رِجَالِ أُمَّتِي. These two, gold and silk, are haram, or prohibited for the men of my ummah. and they are permitted for women because it is accommodating to their feminine nature, incongruent with the natural masculine predisposition that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created men with. Nonetheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highlighting the asl, the foundation, the essence of every woman from birth, which could be altered due to circumstances incongruent with her feminine nature or disposition. And throughout this particular incident or this particular story, we should be able to distinguish femininity from feminism. Femininity from feminism. So understand the difference between these two terms. Femininity is based upon a woman who lives in her feminine energy. She welcomes attention. She welcomes help. Not that she needs it, but she welcomes. She allows a man to come into her life and be a man. She welcomes help, not begs it, not asks for it, not is needy for it, but she welcomes attention. She welcomes help. She lives in her feminine energy. She is in touch with her feelings, and she values her feelings and does not dismiss them or suppress them. She is compassionate. She is sympathetic to the needs of others, and people are drawn to her because of that energy. People are drawn to her because of that energy. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, خَيْرُ النِّسَاء رَكِبْنَا الْإِبِلِ أَحِنَّا عَلَى الْوَلَدِ فِي صِغْرِهِ أَرْعَاهُ عَلَى الزَّوْجِ فِي ذَاتِ يَدِهِ. The Prophet ﷺ said that the best of women, listen to his description. He said the best of women, رَكِبْنَا الْإِبِلِ, are the women of Quraysh, the women who ride camels. They go after these women. They were very assertive. These women were very independent. Meccan society was a hunter-gatherer society. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. Rakibn al-Ibn. These women got on their camels and they went out. Some of them hunted. Some of them were businesswomen, like Khadija, radiallahu anha, the first wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A clear example of Meccan women and how independent that they were. But although they were independent in that regard, أَحِنَّاهُ عَلَى وَلَدِهِ فِي صِغَرِهِ, these are women that were compassionate and sympathetic to their children in their youth. وَأَرْعَاهُ عَلَى زَوْجِ فِي ذَاتِ يَدٍ, and these were women who were compassionate and sympathetic to their husbands when they finally did get married. They allowed their men to be men, and they consoled them, and they were compassionate and understanding towards their husbands. They protected them in their wealth. They protected them within themselves. Al-hifz al-amana. There was an amana, there was a trustworthiness that the woman had, that not violate her husband's honor while in his absence. Protecting his wealth, protecting his honor. So although we see that in our society today, we've conflated the two. We've associated a woman being feminine with weak, and a woman being a feminist with being strong. Understand, one does not equal the other. You can still be feminine and be strong. You can still be feminine and have a strong personality and be independent and go after what you want. You don't have to rearrange your predisposition to accommodate a masculine energy or to compete with a masculine energy that will only end up leaving you by yourself. Wallahu alim. No man wants another man to compete with him, let alone a woman to compete with him. That's not the way that we're wired. That's not the way that Allah created us. Even when our boys, our sons reach 17, 18, 19, 20 years old in the home, it's this challenge, it's this masculine dominant energy in the home. And at some point, the son realizes that I need to move out because I cannot no longer live under the shadow of my father. I have to be my own man. To remove himself from being challenged and give him the space so that he can develop into the man that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him to be. Feminism, on the other hand, is a thought or concept or an idea that somehow men and women are equal on every single level. And understand that equality on every level, gender equality on every level equals gender dismissal. That you are dismissing me. If you say that me and you are equal on every single level, then that means that there is nothing that makes me unique, nothing that separates me from you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says clearly in the Quran, وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى, and the male is not like the female. The male is not like the female. Gender equality on every level equals gender dismissal. Because if two people are the same, one of you is irrelevant. If two people are the same, one of you is irrelevant. Which is why a woman who adopts this feminist attitude, this mentality, this concept, she always ends up by herself because there's no man that can share the same space with you. Because our energy is equal. And when you put two magnets together, what happens to them? An equal amount of energy. When you put two magnets together, they push away from each other. And that's exactly what happens when you have a woman who acts like a man and a man who does exactly what Allah created him to do, and that is to be a man. The energy is the same, so therefore you're going to push apart. And we need to understand this, especially our young people need to understand this concept and how it is infringing on our abilities to enjoy the marriage, institution of marriage that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. That from amongst his signs is that he created for you men, mates. He created for you men, mates, so that you may find tranquility in them. You may find peace in them. Not find the same energy in them that Allah created you with. You may find peace and tranquility in them. And he placed between you love and compassion. And indeed, and that is a sign for people who reflect. So feminism, brothers and sisters, is a concept or an idea that men and women are equal, somehow equal on every single level. And that the feminist woman embraces a masculine energy. So she is the one that is doing and does not receive. She is the one that is conquering, and as a result of conquering can't lead. And she is the one that makes the money like her male counterpart, all done with a masculine energy that is dominant and competitive, and will be no equality but total dominance. So while they say they want gender equality, in fact, if you embrace a male masculine energy, you don't want equality, you want dominance. Because that's the nature of masculine energy, is to dominate, to conquer. This is why there can't be two men in a home. The energy is to dominate and conquer, to compete. As we see with Umar and Abu Bakr anhu all throughout the life of the Prophet ﷺ, constantly competing, that competition. And although it was a healthy competition, nonetheless it was still masculine energy. It was still competition. The woman that I am referring to today, brothers and sisters, is none other than Nusayba bint Ka'b al-Maziniya al-Khazrajiyya al-Ansariya al-Ma'ruf fi ummat al-Islam bi Ammara. This woman that we know in our ummah as Ammara, her name was Nusayba bint Ka'b, and she was from the Ansar. And as the saying goes, that a woman simply is, but a man must become. Women from the very beginning, min al-lahd, min al-mahd, from the very beginning, from the cradle, she is a woman from the very beginning. However, as boys, we have to develop into men. So women simply are, and a man must become. Understand the nature in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them. The origin of her name, Nusayba, comes from the word nasaba, which in the Arabic language means a relative. To be a relative. And she was in fact a distant relative of the Prophet ﷺ in Bani Najjar. She was from the tribe of Najjar, which is a distant relative from Bani Hashim, the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ. But Nasaba, where her name comes from, it also has another meaning in the Arabic language, which means a nasib, which means to have a share or a portion of something. And there's no doubt that Nusayba bint Ka'b, she has a share or a portion of the reward for creating or pioneering the blueprint upon which the character of the Muslim woman was built. It was mentioned in the Jami of Tirmidhi, rahimahullah, an Ammara al-Ansariya, أنها أتت نبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالت يا رسول الله ما أرى كل شيء إلا للرجال وما أرى النساء يذكرن في الشيء يعني في القرآن. فنزلت هذه الآية إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشئين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. That it was mentioned in the Jami of Tirmidhi that this woman, Amara, she came to the Prophet ﷺ one day and she said, "O Messenger of Allah, why is it that I read the Quran and I see that only men are mentioned in the Quran? And I find that women are never mentioned in the Quran. What is the deal? Why is it that men are always mentioned in the Quran but women are never mentioned?" And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah from Surah Al-Ahzab, that indeed those who are Muslim and believe in the submitting men and submitting women, the believing men and believing women, the obedient men and obedient women, the truthful men and truthful women, the patient men and patient women, the God-fearing men and God-fearing women, the men who give charity and women who give charity, the fasting men and fasting women, the men who protect their chastity and the women who protect their chastity, the men who remember Allah much and the women who remember Allah much. Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a magnificent reward. This ayat will serve as a mission statement for gender equality in our religion. It's sad today when you find Muslim women who find fault with the religion of Islam, indicting the religion of Islam on charges of misogyny and patriarchal system that somehow marginalizes women and doesn't give them their rights. So much so they have to join feminist movements and other movements that clearly contradict the religion of Islam so that they believe they can get the rights that they are due. SubhanAllah. What do you say about this ayah? Allah clearly says that men and women are equal in terms of their charity and their obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is equality. And this wasn't a case of Nusayba, right, creating an uproar in the community or questioning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about women's rights. Nor was it a case of women taking issue with the Sharia as you find today. Wallah al-Adin, you have Muslim women who put themselves up to be scholars in Islam that say ayahs in the Quran need to be removed from the Quran. This is how deep it has gone. You have women who profess to be scholars in Islamic sciences and believe that there are ayats in the Quran that need to be removed. Ayats like the ayats related to ta'addud al-zawjat, related to polygyny, that these ayats need to be removed from the Quran. So we're going to rearrange the Quran to satisfy your desires. La ilaha illallah. Rather, Nusayba's question to the Prophet ﷺ is about what is known as inclusion. They wanted to be included in the narrative, which has already been incorporated in the Sharia, considering that everything that applies to men in the Quran applies to women, unless there is a specific text that addresses the women specifically. But everything in the Quran that applies to men applies to women, unless there is a verse in the Quran that specifically identifies women. When we talk about modesty, al-haya, usually we think that that applies to women, that women have to cover, women have to stop wearing makeup, women have to not, attract attention. That also applies to men in Islam. The same applies to men. So we have to be mindful of this. Nonetheless, but she didn't use her misunderstanding as a launch pad for a feminist movement designed to attack a so-called misogynistic system at the expense of losing her deen and more importantly, losing her femininity. And the Prophet ﷺ, he included the women in his community in the conversation of Islam. In the narration, they were included. He did not exclude the women. There was inclusion. And make no mistake about it, inclusion starts with transparency and knowledge. It was mentioned on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu. جاءت امرأة إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالت يا رسول الله ذهب الرجال بحديثك فاجعل لنا من نفسك يوما نأتيك فيه تعلمنا مما علمك الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم اجتمعنا فقالت هذه المرأة اجتمعنا في يوم كذا وكذا في مكان كذا وكذا فأتاهن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فعلمهن مما علمه الله. Inclusion. He included them in the discussion. A woman came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She said, "O Messenger of Allah, ذهب الرجال بحديثك." The men are the only ones that are learning all of your narrations. The men are the ones that are only ones learning from you. They spend all of their time around you. Make for yourself, give us from yourself some time. Give us a day where you can come to us and teach us from what Allah taught you. Yani Mu'min Jabik, she didn't want you to teach us from your own intellect. She said, teach us. Allamna mimma allamak Allah. Teach us what Allah taught you. Because sometimes as men, we want to give them our version of Islam. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. We want to give them our version of Islam. No, that's haram. Where's the ayah, ya tayyib? Where's the ayah that it is haram? Don't give anything from your own self. When we speak, we say, Qala Allah, Qala Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Mu'min jaybik anta. But we give from the book of Allah and from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. She said, all of the men have made off with all of your knowledge. Make for us a day where you can come to us and teach us our religion. As you can see, women wanted inclusion. Not today where you see this, what has become a staple in, Islamic gatherings for women of fashion shows and, and entertainment and music and all of these things like this. SubhanAllah, where's the learning? Where's the learning of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where's the learning of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And then we're constantly calling this imam, my husband is not giving me my rights. What are your rights, sister? Well, he should do this, he should do that. Those are not your rights, sister. Learn your religion. Inclusion, being included in the narrative, starts with learning your religion and learning where you fit in this deen. That's where it starts. The women weren't asking the Prophet ﷺ for any more than to teach them their religion. That's all we want. Teach us what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught you. And I'm not saying that, fashion shows and all of these things, entertainment, provided that it's within the limits of Islam, that it is not necessary. But that has now become the norm. And that the only time that we gather, this is what we're gathering for. And Islamic knowledge, inviting scholars, women scholars, producing scholars in our communities is not a primary responsibility. So she asked the Prophet ﷺ for inclusion, but she didn't use her misunderstanding to create a movement to now challenge Islam. In Islam, there is a patriarchal system, all right? Putting the man at the head of his family, as the responsible one for his family. Hence the fact Allah created Adam first, and then created from his rib Hawa, his wife. He was first. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed them about eating from the tree, He addressed Adam, even though both of them were guilty of the sin. Because a man is responsible for his flock. كُلُّكُمْ رَاءٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock. الرَّجُلٌ رَاءٍ وَمَسْئُولٌ عَنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ. A man is a ra'in, a man is a shepherd, and he is responsible for his household. But He also said, وَامْرَأَةُ رَا'iyyah. But a woman is a shepherd, and she is also responsible. So leadership in a marriage, although the system is patriarchal, however, the woman is given her share of leadership, her share of responsibility within the institution of marriage. This woman, Ammara, Nusayba bint Ka'b, she defended the Prophet ﷺ during the battle of Uhud. The Prophet ﷺ said, لما قام النصيبة بنت كعب اليوم يعني يوم الأحد خير من مقام فلان وفلان. The Prophet ﷺ said, the station or the status of Ammara today on the day of Uhud is better than this man and this man and this man who ran away from the battlefield. SubhanAllah, this was a woman who the Prophet ﷺ said that on this day, during this battle, she is better than some of the men that ran and fled from the battlefield. He said, مَا الْتَفَتُّ يَمِينٍ وَلَا شِمَالٍ إِلَّا وَأَنَا أَرَاهَا تُقَاتِلُ دُونِي. He's the Prophet ﷺ said, I didn't look to my left or to my right, except that I saw this woman defending me, fighting for me. I saw this woman fighting for me, defending me. But this wasn't her intention. She didn't come to the battlefield to fight. as it wasn't legislated for women to fight, nor is it something the Prophet ﷺ approved of. Because our religion is designed to preserve the feminine nature of the woman. Aisha asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, هل على النساء جهاد؟ فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم نعم جهاد لا قتال في الحج والعمرة. Aisha asked the Prophet ﷺ, do women have to fight jihad? Do they have to fight battles? Do they have to stand on the front line? The Prophet ﷺ said, yes, but the type of fighting that doesn't involve fighting. The type of battles that don't involve physical fighting. And that is Hajj and Umrah. Your battle is performing Hajj and performing Umrah. Performing Hajj amidst 3 million people. 3.5 million people trying to make it to the Jamarat, to stone the Jamarat. That is your jihad. Your jihad is trying to make tawaf around the Kaaba when there's 2 million people. Your jihad is trying to kiss the black stone, and if any of you have been to Mecca to perform Hajj and Umrah, you know that that is a jihad for men, let alone women. That is your jihad. Because our religion is designed to preserve the feminine nature of the woman and not to put her in risky situations wherein her femininity would be infringed upon. There are other measures that our religion has given us to preserve the feminine nature of the woman, like the patriarchal system in a hunter-gatherer environment where the man is responsible for going out and providing a living for the woman. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله به بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. That men are the protectors and maintainers of the women, because of the strength that one has given one of them more than the other, and because the men spend from their money. The men spend from their wealth. Brothers, move up as much as you can, inshallah. The men spend from their wealth. Number 2, from the measures that the religion has given us to preserve the feminine nature of the woman is the wearing of gold and jewelry for women while making it haram for men. Number 3, women are not allowed to fight jihad unless it is absolutely necessary. Jihad, a defensive jihad, but in offensive, they are not responsible. And the last, women are not allowed to look and resemble men in any way, shape, form, or fashion. In her walk, in her talk, in her demeanor, it is haram. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لَعْنَ اللَّهُ الْمُتَشَبِّهِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ بِالنِّسَاءِ وَمُتَشَبِّهَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ بِالرِّجَالِ رواه البخاري. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah has cursed the men who resemble women and the women who resemble men. This is to preserve and to protect the feminine nature in which Allah has created the woman with. Unlike the society today where there's gender-neutral clothes. A woman can wear any clothes she wants. General neutral circles. Women should not feel shy or feel shame or feel shy in any group or any circle. She should be free to be who she wants to be. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. At the expense of what? At the expense of what? As Allah says in the Quran, قَالَ أَتَسْتَبْنِلُونَ الَّذِي هُوَ أَدْنَى بِالَّذِي هُوَ خَيْرٌ. Would you trade that which is greater for that which is less? The status that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave women in Islam is greater and more powerful than anything manufactured humanly. Anything humanly manufactured. However, the Prophet ﷺ did allow women to come to the battlefield and care for the wounded, as it was mentioned in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Qurrat al-Azdi. قال كانت النساء خالد ibn Walid والنساء أصحابه مشمرات يحملن الماء للمجاهدين وهو يقاتل الروم. المراد الأجائز, يعني those who are older in age. The Prophet ﷺ, the women, the wives of Khalid ibn Walid, as well as his daughters and his family, the women of his family, as well as the women of his tribe, they used to come out to the battlefield carrying water and tending to the wounded of those who were fighting while the Prophet ﷺ was fighting the Romans. And the Prophet ﷺ, in some instances, even prevented them from coming to the battlefield. As it was mentioned on the authority of Kabsha. قالت يا رسول الله ائذن لي أن أخرج مع جيش كذا وكذا. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا. قالت يا نبي الله إني لا أريد القتال إنما أريد أن أداوي الجرحى وأقوم على المرضى. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لولا أن السنة يقال خرجت فلانة وفلانة لأذنت لك لكن اجلسي في بيتك. That a woman by the name of Kabsha, she came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said, O Messenger of Allah, give me permission to come out during this particular battle. And the Prophet ﷺ said no. She said, O Messenger of Allah, I'm not coming out because I want to fight, but I want to tend to the wounded and the sick. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Lola and sunnah. If it wasn't for the fact that it would become a sunnah, that people would say that this woman came out on that battle, or this woman came on that battle, I would give you permission to come out. He said, but no, stay at home. Stay at home. And the only reason he denied her was because he didn't want the women to think that that now was a sunnah. That every time there's a battle, women have to come out and tend to the wounded. I don't want that to become a sunnah. I don't want that to become a practice amongst the women. So the Prophet ﷺ prohibited them. So what happened to Nusayba on the battlefield was not intentional. However, she was able to step outside of her comfort zone for a moment and protect the most important asset of this religion, and that is the person of the Prophet ﷺ. And the same applies to defending and protecting his sunnah after his demise. When you look at women today, are women protecting the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ the way that Nusayba protected the person of the Prophet ﷺ on the battlefield? Do you look at women today protecting and preserving the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ the way that Nusayba and many of the sahabiyat protected the person of the Prophet ﷺ during his life? بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بما جاء فيه من الآيات والذكر الحكيم. أقول ما تسمعون أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إقرارا به وتوحيدا. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سراجا منيرا. أما بعد. On the authority of Sa'id bint Sa'd ibn Rabi' قالت دخلت على أم عمارة فقلت حدثني خبرك يوم أحد. That Sa'id bint Sa'd ibn Rabi'a, one of the chiefs of the Ansar, she said that I entered upon the room where Ammara was one day, and mind you, the word spread after the battle of Uhud. So all of the women wanted to know what happened. How did the Prophet ﷺ say that the station of Ammara today is better than this man and this man and this man? What did she do? What was so magnificent? When the word got back to Medina, women from all over wanted to know what happened. So Sa'id, she said, I entered upon Ammara and I said to her, tell me about what happened to you on the day of Uhud. حدثيني خبرك يوم أحد. Tell me about what happened to you on the day of Uhud. I want to hear the narration directly from you. فقالت خرجت أول النهار ومعي السقاء فيه ماء فانتهيت إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو في أصحابي والريح والدولة للمسلمين يومئذ فلما انهزم المسلمون انحزت إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فجعلت أباشر القتال بنفسي وأدب عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بالسيف. وفي رواية قالت ترى العمارة يومئذ تقاتل أشد القتال إنها لهاجزة ثوبها على وسطها والسيف بيدها الأخرى تدب عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. الله أكبر. Ammara, she said that I came out at the beginning of the day and I had my water skin with me and I came to the Prophet ﷺ while he was with his companions. وَالرِّيحُ وَالدَّوْلَ لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ, and the Muslims were winning. The Muslims were advancing against the enemy army during the Battle of Uhud. She said, but then the Muslims made the fatal mistake. Those that were archers on the mountain came down. Khalid ibn Walid took a group of the disbelievers around the mountain of Uhud and attacked them from behind. And Muslims began to run. She said, and when Muslims began to run off the battlefield, she said, I immediately began ubashir al-qital. I immediately began to fight at that moment. I began now, I'm right there in the middle of it, watching them flee from the Prophet ﷺ, and he's standing there with only a few people around him. And it was her natural instinct to grab her sword and begin defending the Prophet ﷺ. Allahu Akbar. She said that I grabbed my garment, holding my garment with one hand and holding my sword with the other hand, defending the Prophet ﷺ. Femininity or feminism? Femininity. She still maintained her decorum as a woman, still maintaining her modesty by making sure her garment doesn't come up, grabbing her garment with one hand and the sword in the other hand, defending the Prophet ﷺ all by herself. She said, حتى جرحت 13 جرحا. Imam al-Tabari said that Amara on that day, she had over 13 lashes on her body. 13 lashes on her body, 13 wounds on her body that she took defending the Prophet ﷺ. We have to ask ourselves, how many sacrifices have our women made for Islam today? You sit, and when someone criticizes you about your hijab, we run and cry, oh, they're criticizing us for wearing hijab. So what? So what? You're above criticism. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran that you will hear from the people of the book, Adhan Kathira. You will hear many things that are going to harm you. They called the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam Sahirun, Kadhab, Majnoon. They called the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam crazy. They called him a poet. قَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَسْتَ مُرْسَلًا. And those who disbelieve say, you're not even a prophet. You're not even a messenger. They denied the fact that he was even a messenger. None of us have gone in through anything remotely close to that. And yet here today, with this Islamic phobic rhetoric, whether through our president or anyone else, soon as someone says something about Muslims or about Islam or about your hijab, we're ready to start a campaign. Grow some thicker skin and understand that this comes with the territory. This comes with the territory of being Muslim. أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Do you think that you're going to enter Jannah and the trials and tribulations that came to the nation that came before you are not going to come to you? Alif Lam Mim. أَحَسِبَ النَّاسَ أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people think that they can say that they believe and they are not going to be tested? That Allah is not going to test you? You're going to be left to yourself to say you believe with Allah not testing you? La wallahi. That's not the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But every time someone criticizes Islam or Muslim, we have to create a movement in defense of that. What sacrifices have our women made for Islam? What sacrifices are they making? Here's a woman who was wounded on 13 different places on her body, protecting the Prophet ﷺ, while we sit at home from a place of privilege talking about, oh, woe is me. Waylun lana. Woe be to us. This person is doing this to us. This one is saying this about Islam. Allahu musta'an. And it was mentioned in another narration, قالت قد رأيتني وقد انكشف الناس عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فما بقي إلا نذير حوالي 10 وأنا وبناي ابني وزوجي بين يدي صلى الله عليه وسلم نذب عنه عليه الصلاة والسلام. She said that I saw when the men began to run away from the Prophet ﷺ, and there were only a few people left around him, maybe 10 men that surrounded the Prophet ﷺ to protect him. She said, when me and my son and my husband were standing there defending the Prophet ﷺ. Me, my son, and my husband. The Prophet ﷺ said to her and her husband and her son, Barakallahu alaykum min ahli bayt, maqami ummaki, ummaka, khayrun min maqami fulan wa fulan. قالت ادعو الله يا رسول الله أن نرافقك في الجنة. The Prophet ﷺ said to Amara, her son and her husband, may Allah bless you. Barakallahu alaykum. May Allah bless you. Min ahli bayti, that may Allah bless your household. Maqam ummak, the position, the status of your mother today is better than this one and this one. Amara said, O Messenger of Allah, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nurafikuka fil Jannah, that we will be your companions in Jannah. I don't want anything from you in this life. Make dua that Allah make me your companion in Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma ja'al rufaqa'i, Allahumma ja'alhum rufaqa'i fil Jannah. فما أبالي فقالت أمارة فما أبالي ما أصابني من الدنيا بعد ذلك. She said, O Messenger of Allah, make dua to Allah that Allah make me from amongst your companions in paradise. The Prophet raised his hands and said, O Allah, make her and her family from my companions in paradise. Amara said, I don't care what happens to me after today, after the Prophet ﷺ made that dua for me. ما أبالي ما أصابني بعد ذلك. I don't care what happens to me after this. The Prophet ﷺ just made dua that Allah make me from amongst his companions. Allahu Akbar. And this is just a brief entry into the life of one of many great sahabiyat, great companions of the Prophet ﷺ during his life. And it would behoove us as Muslims, it would do us some good as Muslims, that the month of Ramadan is approaching very quickly, that we would take the time out in the month of Ramadan to begin reading about the lives, the stories, the narratives, the narrations of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. More so for the men, reading about the women, so that we can learn to have a greater deal of respect for women, and for women to read about the men, so they would learn to have a great deal of respect for men. We are living in a society that has now begun to, begin to infringe upon our culture. We have a culture here in Islam, and that is one of respect for men and respect for women. Respect for women as the mothers of our communities. That our communities cannot grow without the women. And the Prophet ﷺ swore to Allah to defend and protect the two weak ones in his community. That was al-mar'a wal-yatim, that is a woman and an orphan. These were the two weakest links in his community, and he swore by Allah to defend their honor and to defend their reputation against anyone. And unfortunately today, men, we read about the great men of Islam, so we learn to have a great deal of respect for men, but still no respect for women, and vice versa. Women read about the great women of Islam, and they learn to have a closer relationship with women and still disrespect their men. So why don't we try doing the opposite? Why don't we try men reading about the great women of Islam, so we can learn to have a greater deal of respect for our women, and for women vice versa to read about the men, the great men of the Sahaba in this religion, so that they will learn to have a greater deal of respect for the men and their families. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us for any shortcomings that we've had in misrepresenting his religion. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to purify ourselves from our mistakes and our sins during the upcoming month of Ramadan. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا فإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم بارك لنا في أولادنا، اللهم بارك لنا في مجتمعاتنا، اللهم بارك لنا في كبارنا، اللهم بارك لنا في علمائنا، اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عملا يقربنا إلى حبك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على عبدك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأقم الصلاة.